Hello everyone, this is Pami Jaiswal and I'm here to briefly discuss the background and requirements for large corporate borrowers as rolled out by SEBI. The untiring efforts of SEBI as well as the government for uplifting the bond market has been quite commendable. Whether it is the introduction of the electronic bidding platform for privately placed debt securities or the consolidation of ISIN requirements for debt instruments, SEBI has already started taking long strides to deepen the bond market and is a step towards accomplishment of the budget announcement by the government way back in 2018-19. As a result, if we look at the latest available data, we find that the country's bond market as compared to the country's bank loans stand almost at par, where the bond markets are around 34 lakh crores as compared to the bank loans, which stand at 35 lakh crores. SEBI, in its continued efforts for deepening the bond markets, had brought a circular in November 2018, whereby certain entities which qualify or comply with the conditions are required to identify themselves as large corporate borrowers. And thereby, after being identified, they need to comply with certain requirements. One of the most important is the incremental borrowings made by such entities has to majorly, or you can say a substantial chunk of the incremental borrowings by such large corporate borrowers has to be out of bonds or debt securities. Now, this particular circular, if we see today, has already been consolidated with an operational circular rolled out by SEBI in August 2021, which has latest been updated in April 2022. Now, to begin with, let's understand who are large corporate borrowers. Now, this circular or this particular requirement rolled out by SEBI provides three cumulative conditions. So if we look at the requirements, the conditions given under the circular are cumulative, and that means all the three conditions will have to be complied with. Let's see what are the conditions. The first condition is that the entity which has listed either of its specified securities or debt securities or non-convertible preference shares. If an entity has listed either of these securities, the first condition is said to be complied with. The second condition is that such listed entity should have an long-term outstanding borrowings of more than 100 crores, where such long-term borrowings should have an original maturity of more than 1 year. And when I say the long-term borrowing should be more than 100 crores, this particular chunk is not including external commercial borrowings and intercompany or intercorporate borrowings between a holding and a subsidiary. The third condition is having a credit rating of AA and above on the unsupported bank borrowings and plain vanilla bonds issued by such listed entity. Where the entity has multiple ratings, the highest of the rating will be considered. So while this circular was brought in the year 2018, why are we discussing about this circular now, sitting in December 2022? Let me tell you, the actual mandatory implementation under this circular actually started from the first block of 2 financial years, starting from 21-22 and 22-23. The initial 2 years of the applicability under this circular was on a mode of comply or explain. Unlike the first 2 years of implementation, the mandatory application started for the prescribed class of entities from FY 2022. That means in the first block of 2 years, which is FY 2022 and FY 2023, that means FY 21-22 and FY 22-23 is the first block of mandatory implementation under this circular. Having said that, if a large corporate borrower or an LCB fails to comply with the requirements under this circular at the end of every block of 2 years, it will be penalized to the extent of 0.2% on the shortfall of the incremental borrowing which is supposed to do. Now, let us quickly see what are the disclosure requirements or other the compliances under this LCB. Initial disclosure has to be given to the stock exchange within 30 days of the beginning of the financial year in which the entity classifies itself as an LCB. And the second disclosure requirement is an annual disclosure requirement, which will completely give a complete details on the incremental borrowing made by way of debt issuances within 45 days of the end of the financial year. And the major compliance under the LCB circular is to make the incremental borrowings or a major chunk or a substantial chunk of your incremental borrowings out of bond issuances or issuances of debt instruments. Let us try and understand the requirement briefly by way of this table. Now, you can see on your screens in FY 2019 and FY 2020, as well as FY 21, if the entity was not able to comply with the requirements, it could have simply given reasons for not being able to do so. But let us look at FY 2023. Now, in FY 2023, if we assume that this entity for which we are discussing already complies with the two conditions, that is, it is a listed entity, and second, it has a credit rating of AA and above, then the third requirement of having outstanding long-term borrowings is met if we look at FY 23. Why do we say that? Because we have to see the outstanding borrowings as on the last day of the financial year, or rather the preceding financial year. So if I am looking at the requirements or trying to identify myself as an LCB in the year FY 23, I will be looking at my outstanding borrowings on the last day of the financial year of FY 22. So yes, here if we see the outstanding borrowings as on the last day of the financial year 22 is 120 crores, which is more than 100 crores. And therefore, the company in the year FY 23 is an LCB. Now, the incremental borrowings made during the financial year 23 is 50, which means that the amount required to be raised through debt market is 12.5 crores. Whereas the amount actually raised, let's say, was only 10 crores. So there is a shortfall of 2.5 crores. Will the penalty be levied in the first year itself? Answer is no, because the entities are getting a block of 2 years to comply with the requirements. So this shortfall of 2.5 years is required to be met in the next financial year, which is FY 24. And here also, if we look at the example that is on our screens, we'll find that the company or this entity could raise only 1.5 crores. So out of the total obligation for the previous FY, that was 2.5 CR, as well as the obligation of 30 crores for FY 24 itself, it could only raise 1.5 crores out of bond issuances. Therefore, the shortfall was taken to 31 crores. Will the penalty be imposed on the entire 31 crores at the end of FY 24? Answer is no. The penalty will be imposed on the shortfall for the previous year, because you have a time of 2 years to comply with the requirements. So here the penalty will be imposed on 1 crore, which comes to 20,000. Now with this, I think the idea behind this short video was not to answer all the queries revolving around LCBs, but surely to pick up certain concerns, or rather raise the concerns before the stakeholders who are watching this video now. Now, there could be several questions. As you can see on your screens, whether an LCB is required to check the applicability of the LCB framework every year, or whether this LCB framework is relevant for all large corporates. What is the meaning of incremental borrowing? What if I don't have any incremental borrowing? Okay, so whether I should take the disbursement amount, or I should take take the date of the facility arrangement to understand what should be my outstanding borrowings. If I don't have any dated instruments, whether the LCB circular still complies, still applies to my entity. Now, all these questions are not that relevant for those big entities which are already deep, which have deep legs in the bond market. But for entities which are naive to this idea on LCBs, or who are newly identified as LCBs without much exposure in the debt market, the questions are actually real and the questions are very critical. So this is a short video just to set the alarm for the large corporates, so that Q4 is the quarter where you need to make the compliances good. Thank you, and we will want your feedback on this video and any queries that we could solve. Thank you so much.